The air was brittle that evening, sharp with a chill that cut through the thick glass windows of the Renault Museum. The gala inside buzzed with laughter and the clinking of champagne flutes, the elite of the city preening under the soft glow of chandeliers. But Agent Evelyn Carter wasn't here to admire the art or schmooze with the wealthy. Her eyes darted over the crowd, every sense taut, as she tried to suppress the growing unease knotting in her stomach. Agent Carter, her partner Luke Wells, called softly over her earpiece. "North Wing, by the staircase. We've got something." Evelyn excused herself from a patron mid-conversation and weaved through the crowd, her dark suit blending seamlessly into the sea of black and silver evening wear. She followed Luke's directions, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble floors, each step an echo of her apprehension. The North Wing was quieter, removed from the main event, its shadows longer, and the gilded frames of forgotten portraits staring down as if they held secrets. Luke was waiting by the foot of the staircase, his expression tight. "You're going to want to see this," he muttered, leading her to a small alcove, partially obscured by an ornate curtain. There, tucked neatly on the floor, was an unassuming black briefcase. Its surface was matte, free of fingerprints or scratches, and a pale slip of paper stuck to its handle bore 3 simple words in precise, mechanical lettering. "Open with care." Evelyn crouched beside the case, her latex-gloved hands brushing over its surface. It wasn't locked, but something about it felt deliberate. She exchanged a glance with Luke before flipping the latch. The lid clicked open with a quiet, ominous finality. Inside was a small wooden puzzle box, intricately carved with swirling patterns that seemed to writhe under the dim light. Its surface shimmered faintly, as though imbued with something more than just craftsmanship. Beneath it lay a folded note, its edges crisp and clean. Evelyn unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the typewritten text. "When the picture forms, your path begins. But beware, what you seek will not be what you find." Her pulse quickened. The message was cryptic, yet pointed. The air in the alcove felt heavier, pressing against her like the weight of unseen eyes. "This wasn't left here by accident," Luke said, his voice low. "Someone wanted it to be found. By you." Evelyn nodded, her thoughts racing. "Seal this off. I'll take the puzzle back to the lab. Whatever this is, it's not over." As she carried the briefcase back through the gala, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Glancing back, she caught a flicker of movement in the crowd, a figure in a dark coat slipping out the museum's grand doors. By the time she reached the exit, they were gone, leaving only a trail of cold night air and unanswered questions. Back at headquarters, the puzzle box sat under the glare of a single desk lamp, its ornate carvings casting jagged shadows across Evelyn's workspace. The hum of the office around her faded into white noise as she stared at the box, her unease growing with each passing moment. It was almost as if the box was waiting, its quiet presence a challenge she couldn't ignore. Luke leaned against the edge of her desk, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. "You've been staring at that thing for over an hour. Think it's going to solve itself?" Evelyn shot him a dry look, but didn't reply. Instead, she picked up the box, turning it over in her hands. The carvings weren't random, she realized. They formed a pattern. Tiny grooves connected at odd angles, suggesting that the box could be manipulated. It wasn't just decoration, it was a puzzle, just as the note had promised. Her fingers worked carefully, sliding panels and twisting knobs that revealed hidden compartments. Each movement clicked with mechanical precision, and with each step, the dread in her chest deepened. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the box opened with a faint hiss. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph. The image was stark and haunting, a wide circular room lined with shelves full of strange objects. In the center of the room stood a pedestal holding an unlit lantern. The space was unfamiliar, yet it stirred something in the back of Evelyn's mind, like a half-forgotten dream. Scrawled on the back of the photo in delicate, looping handwriting were the words, "Begin where the light is missing." Evelyn frowned, her mind racing to piece together the meaning. The phrase felt weighted, purposeful, as though it held the key to something much larger. Before she could dwell on it further, her phone buzzed on the desk. It was Luke. "Another package just came in, addressed to you, hand-delivered to the front desk." Evelyn felt her stomach drop as she made her way to the lobby. Waiting for her on the receptionist's counter was a brown parcel, neatly wrapped and sealed with crimson wax. The sight of it sent a shiver down her spine. "Do you think it's from the same sender?" Luke asked, eyeing the package warily. "There's only one way to find out," Evelyn replied, her voice steady despite the growing unease clawing at her chest. Back at her desk, she carefully unwrapped the parcel. Inside was another note, folded with meticulous precision, and a second photograph. This one showed the entrance to an abandoned observatory on the outskirts of the city, its windows boarded and its towering dome shrouded in shadows. Evelyn's heart sank as she read the note. "The second step is yours to take. Midnight awaits." Her breath caught. Midnight was only hours away, and the sense of dread gnawing at her told her she wouldn't be alone when she arrived. The observatory loomed ahead, like a relic from a forgotten time, its dome silhouetted against the pale glow of a crescent moon. Evelyn tightened her grip on the flashlight as she approached the rusting gates, the sound of her boots crunching on frost-coated gravel, the only noise in the suffocating silence. The photo clutched in her other hand had led her here, but the unease gnawing at her told her she was stepping into a trap, albeit one she couldn't resist. The gates creaked loudly as she pushed them open, the sound echoing unnaturally in the still air. The building's facade was weathered and stained, the windows dark and jagged like broken teeth. Evelyn scanned the area, her instincts on high alert, but the grounds were eerily empty. She reached the observatory's heavy oak door and found it slightly ajar, the faint scent of mildew and cold stone wafting out to meet her. Her flashlight cut through the thick darkness as she entered, revealing a cavernous main hall littered with debris. The air was stagnant, tinged with a faint metallic undertone that made her skin crawl. Evelyn's eyes darted around, her pulse quickening as the beam of light illuminated old, dust-covered furniture and peeling wallpaper. The room was a mausoleum of abandonment, yet it felt alive, as if the shadows themselves were watching her. At the center of the room, just as in the photograph, was a pedestal. On it rested an unlit lantern. Evelyn's steps faltered as she approached, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The pedestal seemed untouched by time, its marble surface gleaming faintly in the weak moonlight streaming through a cracked window. The lantern was made of dark, ornate metal, its intricate patterns matching the carvings on the puzzle box. Beside it lay a folded piece of paper. Evelyn hesitated before picking it up, her fingers trembling slightly. The note read, "Light it, and the truth will begin to reveal itself. But remember, reflections are not always what they seem." The words sent a chill down her spine. She looked at the lantern, her mind racing. There was no visible fuel source, no wick, nothing to suggest it could be lit. Yet as she ran her fingers over its cold surface, the faintest hum resonated from within, almost like a heartbeat. Her thoughts were interrupted by a faint sound, soft, rhythmic, like footsteps. Evelyn froze, her breath catching in her throat. She swung her flashlight toward the source, but the beam revealed only empty shadows. The sound stopped, leaving behind an oppressive silence that seemed to mock her. "Hello," she called, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her chest. Only the echo answered. Evelyn turned back to the lantern. Whatever was happening here, the answers lay within. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hand over the lantern's surface and willed herself to trust the unknown. The moment her hand made contact, the room shifted. The air grew impossibly cold, her breath visible in short, ragged bursts. The lantern flared to life without warning, a soft, eerie glow emanating from within. Shadows danced along the walls, forming shapes that seemed almost human, but warped and fragmented, as if distorted by a shattered mirror. Evelyn's gaze was drawn to the far wall, where a large, tarnished mirror hung crookedly. The glow from the lantern reflected in its surface, but something was wrong. In the mirror, the room was different, clean, pristine, as though untouched by time. And standing in the center was a figure cloaked in shadow. Evelyn's blood ran cold as the figure began to move, stepping closer to the mirror's surface. She instinctively raised her flashlight, but the beam seemed to bend, swallowed by the mirror's unnatural depth. The figure stopped inches from the glass, its outline sharp and unnervingly human, save for the absence of a face. The reflection of the lantern flickered, its light dimming. Evelyn forced herself to stay calm, her mind racing as she pieced together the riddle. Reflections are not always what they seem. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice echoing in the stillness. The figure tilted its head, a movement that was disturbingly deliberate. Slowly, it raised an arm and pointed at the lantern in Evelyn's hands. She glanced down, her heart pounding as she realized the glow was fading rapidly. Without thinking, she turned the base of the lantern. The hum returned, louder this time, vibrating through her fingertips. The mirror rippled like water, and the shadowy figure stepped through. Evelyn stumbled back, her flashlight flickering wildly. The room was plunged into darkness as the lantern's glow extinguished completely. A voice, soft and dissonant, filled the air surrounding her. "You are ready for the next step." When the light returned, the figure was gone. In its place was a single piece of paper, lying at her feet. Her hands shook as she picked it up, her eyes scanning the handwritten message. "Your past holds the key. Return to where it all began." Her mind reeled as memories surfaced, fragmented images of a place she hadn't thought about in years, the orphanage where she'd grown up, a place she had vowed never to return to. The shadows in the room seemed to close in as Evelyn stepped away from the pedestal. The air felt heavier, laden with the weight of something ancient and unseen. Whatever game she was caught in, it was far from over. The orphanage stood in ruins, its skeletal frame cloaked in ivy and decay. Evelyn parked her car at the edge of the property, the headlights slicing through the fog that clung to the ground like a living thing. Memories clawed at her as she stepped out, the scent of damp earth and mildew dragging her back to a childhood she'd fought to forget. The building seemed smaller now, yet no less imposing. Its broken windows stared down like hollow eyes, and the once grand double doors hung crooked on their hinges. Evelyn approached slowly, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of dead leaves. Her flashlight cut through the gloom as she entered, illuminating peeling wallpaper and crumbling plaster. The air inside was suffocating, heavy with the scent of rot and something metallic. As she moved deeper into the building, the memories grew sharper. Whispers in the halls, laughter echoing in the courtyard, and the cold, unyielding gaze of the headmistress. Evelyn followed the faint hum in her chest, the same resonance she'd felt with the lantern. It led her to a room at the end of the hall, the headmistress's office. The door creaked open, revealing a space untouched by time. A single object sat on the desk, another puzzle box, this one larger and more intricate than the last. Her hands trembled as she approached. She knew better than to trust it. yet she couldn't resist the pull. The box opened easily, revealing a stack of photographs bound by a red ribbon. She flipped through them, her breath catching as familiar faces stared back at her. Children she'd grown up with, smiling and carefree. And then, at the bottom of the stack, was her own face. But the smile wasn't hers. Beneath the photographs was a note. "It's been you all along." Evelyn's flashlight flickered, the shadows in the room twisting unnaturally. Somewhere behind her, a door creaked open. The room was a tomb of silence, thick and suffocating, as Evelyn stood frozen, the note trembling in her hand. "It's been you all along." The words reverberated in her mind, heavy with implication. The air around her felt alive, charged with an invisible energy that prickled at her skin and tugged at her thoughts. Shadows crawled along the edges of the room, twisting in unnatural patterns as though mocking her confusion. She turned slowly toward the door that had creaked open behind her. Beyond it lay darkness, impenetrable, vast, and humming faintly with a low, resonant tone. Her flashlight flickered again, the beam barely penetrating the void. Something about the doorway beckoned her, a magnetic pull she couldn't resist. The hum grew louder as she stepped through, each footfall swallowed by the thick, oppressive air. The corridor beyond was unlike anything she'd encountered in the orphanage before. Its walls shimmered faintly, as though crafted from polished obsidian, reflecting distorted images of herself with each step. The reflections twisted and writhed, their movements slightly out of sync, their faces contorted in faint, unfamiliar expressions. Evelyn stopped in her tracks, her pulse hammering in her ears. One of the reflections broke from the pattern, freezing mid-step. Its eyes, though identical to hers, were darker, emptier, two voids that seemed to drink in the dim light. The figure smiled, a slow, deliberate curl of the lips that sent ice down her spine. "You don't remember, do you?" The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, layered and resonant, echoing in the hollow corridor. Evelyn's throat tightened. "Remember what? Who were you?" The reflection's smile widened, splitting its face unnaturally. "I am what you've forgotten. I am what you've buried." The walls around her rippled, the obsidian surface melting into scenes from her childhood. The orphanage's once vivid memories played out before her. Children laughing, running through sunlit halls, their faces filled with innocence. But there was a dissonance, a wrongness as the scenes began to warp. The children's laughter grew hollow, their faces twisting into pale imitations of joy. In one scene, she saw herself, younger and smaller, standing in the courtyard. She was alone, her expression blank as she stared at a distant point on the horizon. Behind her, the headmistress watched silently, her shadow stretching unnaturally across the ground. "You were chosen," the voice whispered, pulling Evelyn back to the present. "From the beginning, you were the key." Her hands curled into fists, her nails biting into her palms. "Chosen for what? What is this?" The figure tilted its head, its hollow eyes gleaming. "To finish what was started." The corridor stretched ahead, its end now illuminated by a faint glow. Evelyn's instincts screamed for her to turn back, but the pull was irresistible. She moved forward, the air growing colder with each step. The light at the end revealed a circular room, the same one from the photograph in the puzzle box. The room's walls were lined with shelves, each filled with strange objects that hummed faintly with an unnatural energy. A cracked pocket watch ticking in reverse, a mirror reflecting nothing but darkness, and countless other curiosities that defied logic. At the center stood a pedestal, its surface empty save for an engraved phrase, "Look within to see beyond." Evelyn approached hesitantly, her breath visible in the frigid air. A mirror hung above the pedestal, its surface cloudy and rippling like water. As she looked into it, the distortion cleared, revealing not her reflection, but a scene, a vision of her, back in the orphanage as a child, sitting in the headmistress's office. In the vision, young Evelyn held a puzzle box, her small fingers tracing its intricate carvings. The headmistress's voice, low and melodic, echoed faintly. "It's not just a game, child. It's a doorway, and only you can open it." Evelyn stumbled back, her chest tight with panic. The figure from the reflections appeared in the mirror, its dark eyes locking onto hers. "This is your truth," it said, its voice a blend of hers and something ancient. "You opened the door once before, and now you must close it." The mirror rippled violently, its surface shattering outward into a cascade of liquid light that enveloped the room. Evelyn shielded her face, her heartbeat deafening in her ears. When she dared to look again, the room was empty. No pedestal, no shelves, just endless reflective darkness. The voice returned, softer now, almost tender. "Do you see? It was never about me. It's always been you." The realization struck her like a thunderclap. The puzzles, the messages, the journey, they weren't about uncovering a mastermind. They were about her, about reclaiming the pieces of herself she had locked away. Evelyn closed her eyes, her breathing steadying as she focused. The hum around her quieted, the oppressive weight lifting. Slowly she reached out and touched the darkness. It melted away at her fingertips, revealing light, a soft, golden glow that warmed her skin and filled her chest with an unexpected calm. When she opened her eyes, she was back in her car, parked outside the orphanage. The building was silent, its windows dark. The photo from the puzzle box lay on the passenger seat, but the image had changed. It now showed a clear, open sky, the sun rising over the horizon. Evelyn exhaled, the weight in her chest lifting as she started the car. The game was over, but its lessons would linger. As she drove away, a faint hum echoed in her ears, a reminder of the truth she had finally uncovered.